Kara stared at the human in stunned disbelief, her mouth agape. Her mind struggled to comprehend the unimaginable event that had just unfolded before her eyes. It was impossible, inconceivable even. Humans weren't supposed to be intelligent. Across the galaxy, it was a well-known fact that humans were considered a lesser species, barely evolved primates, fit only for manual labor and cannon fodder in the Federation's wars. Their minds were seen as incapable of the complex, abstract thinking required for true scientific innovation. Humans couldn't create, couldn't innovate, couldn't revolutionize. They were followers, not leaders, workers, not thinkers. Yet here, in the most prestigious scientific institution in the quadrant, a human had done the unthinkable. This human boy, named Joshua Carter, had not only solved an unsolvable quantum physics problem, but had also introduced a new theorem that would rewrite the very foundations of quantum theory. It shattered everything Kara had ever believed about human limitations. But the proof was undeniable, displayed in glowing neon holographics for all to see. Kara's sharp mind raced as she double-checked Joshua's work, searching desperately for any flaw. There was none. His logic was flawless, his calculations perfect, a symphony of pure reason made manifest. As the classroom erupted into chaos, Kara felt a foreign emotion take root in her ordered Tellarite mind: doubt. If she was wrong about this human, what else could she be wrong about? How deep did the rabbit hole go? She had to know, had to understand. The pursuit of truth demanded nothing less. Her eyes locked with Joshua's, and in that moment, an unspoken pact was formed. Together, they would unravel this mystery and, in doing so, uncover a secret that could shake the galaxy to its very core. In the weeks that followed, Kara found herself increasingly obsessed with understanding the enigma that was Joshua Carter. She began to shadow his movements within the academy and beyond, her keen eyes always watching, always analyzing. In advanced engineering, she was astonished as Joshua effortlessly conjured up revolutionary new theories on warp field dynamics, his agile mind weaving together disparate strands of knowledge in ways that left even their professors stunned. In xenolinguistics, he deciphered the codes of long-dead civilizations with an intuitive grace that bordered on the supernatural, opening up new vistas of understanding. Kara's initial awe soon turned into unease. Joshua's intellect was not merely extraordinary. It was uncanny, almost frightening. No human should possess such a breadth and depth of knowledge, especially not one so young. She began digging deeper into his background, scouring the Academy's vast data archives for any information about his origins. What she found only deepened the mystery. Prior to his enrollment at the Academy, Joshua Carter simply did not exist. There were no birth records, no educational history, no data trail at all. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere, a ghost made flesh. Kara's investigations did not go unnoticed. She soon found herself summoned to the office of the Academy's headmaster, a stern-faced Romulan named Tarek. He regarded her with hooded eyes, his expression unreadable. "You've been asking a lot of questions about Joshua Carter," Tarek said in a silky tone. "Find anything interesting?" Kara met his gaze unflinchingly. "Only more questions, like why there's no record of him before he arrived here, or why his academic files are locked down tighter than a Klingon battlecruiser." Tarek steepled his fingers, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Curiosity is admirable in a scientist, Cadet Kara, but some mysteries are best left unsolved. I would advise you to focus on your studies and leave Mr. Carter to his own." Kara bristled at the implied threat, but held her tongue. She could see that Tarek would be no ally in her quest for answers. If anything, he seemed to be actively working to keep Joshua's secrets buried. Undeterred, Kara continued her clandestine observations, noting the long, unexplained absences when Joshua would disappear from classes, only to reappear hours later, tight-lipped and preoccupied. She overheard snippets of hushed conversations between him and Tarek, fragments of jargon that hinted at some vast, hidden project unfolding behind the scenes. The deeper she delved, the more Kara became convinced that Joshua was no ordinary student, but a key figure in a web of intrigue that extended far beyond the Academy's walls. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, and that there were forces at work who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets safe. But Kara was a scientist, and the pursuit of truth was her highest calling. She would not rest until she had unraveled the enigma that was Joshua Carter, regardless of the cost. As she plotted her next move, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Unseen eyes tracking her every step, hidden ears listening to her every word. She was walking a razor's edge, the stakes impossibly high, and the margin for error slim to none. Kara's fingers flew across the holographic interface, her mind racing as she navigated the labyrinthine depths of the Academy's secure data systems. The soft blue glow of the screen illuminated her determined face in the darkness of her dorm room. Days of meticulous hacking had led to this moment. A file materialized before her, its encryption so dense it seemed to shimmer with malevolence. Kara's heart quickened. This had to be it. She initiated her custom decryption algorithm, watching as layers of security peeled away like the skin of some digital fruit. The file burst open, flooding her screen with information. Kara's eyes widened as she absorbed the contents. Project Prometheus, genetic engineering, neural augmentation, and at the center of it all, Joshua Carter. Impossible, she breathed. But the evidence was irrefutable. Joshua wasn't just gifted. He was engineered, a product of human scientific ambition that had gone far beyond what anyone had thought possible. A piercing alarm shattered the silence. Kara's head snapped up, realizing too late that she had triggered a security protocol. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway outside, and the door exploded inward. Commander Zarn, a towering Klingon, filled the frame, flanked by Academy security. "Cadet Kara," he growled, "you will come with us." Moments later, Kara found herself in Headmaster Tarek's office. The Romulan's face was a mask of cold fury, but it was the sight of Joshua standing quietly in the corner that sent a jolt through her. "You've been quite persistent, Cadet," Tarek said, his voice dangerously soft. "And now you know the truth. The question is, what shall we do with you?" Kara's mind raced, weighing her options. Tarek laid them out plainly: silence and collaboration, or memory wipe and expulsion. She looked at Joshua, really looked at him for the first time. Behind those human eyes, she saw something ancient and profound, a spark of potential that could reshape the galaxy. "I'll work with you," Kara said, her voice steady. "Whatever this is, whatever's really going on, I want to be part of it." Joshua stepped forward, extending his hand. "I knew you'd make the right choice," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "We have much to discuss." As their hands clasped, Kara felt the weight of unseen eyes upon them. In shadowed rooms across the galaxy, monitors flickered to life. The game was afoot, and the true battle was about to begin. Kara's mind reeled as she absorbed the implications of her decision. The weight of secrecy settled on her shoulders like a physical force as she followed Tarek and Joshua down a winding corridor deep beneath the Academy. "The annual Inter-Academy Scholastic Games begin in 3 days, Tarek said, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "It's the perfect cover for our investigation." Joshua nodded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "A gathering of the brightest minds in the quadrant. If there are others like me, that's where we'll find them." They emerged into a cavernous war room, holographic displays flickering to life around them. A grizzled Andorian stood at attention, his antennae twitching with scarcely controlled energy. "This is Commander Valek," Tarek introduced. "He'll be your security detail during the games." Valek's ice-blue eyes appraised them coolly. "I've been briefed on the situation. Rest assured, no harm will come to you under my watch." The journey to Andoria passed in a blur of preparation and strategizing. As their shuttle touched down on the icy world, Kara felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. The games unfolded at a breakneck pace. Challenge after challenge fell before the combined might of Kara and Joshua's intellects. They cracked quantum encryption algorithms in minutes, unraveled the mysteries of dark matter, and decoded long-lost alien languages with seeming ease. But beneath the exhilaration of academic conquest, a current of unease ran through Kara. Her heightened senses, honed by years of scientific observation, picked up on subtle discrepancies. A Tellarite delegate whose gaze lingered too long. A Vulcan aide whose hands stayed suspiciously close to a concealed weapon. "We're being watched," she murmured to Joshua during a rare moment of privacy. He nodded imperceptibly. I've noticed. But by whom and why? Their answer came during the final challenge, a brutally complex wargame simulation designed to test strategic thinking under pressure. As holographic fleets clashed in simulated space, Joshua's brow furrowed. There's an anomaly in the code, he whispered. Someone's interfering with the simulation. Kara's fingers flew across her console, probing deeper into the code. They're masking their presence, but I can trace the signal back to its source. Seconds later, a cascade of code burst forth on Kara's screen, revealing a sophisticated subroutine hidden deep within the simulation. It had been designed not to sabotage the game, but to monitor the participants, assessing their responses and decisions. This isn't just a test, Kara realized with a start. It's a recruitment tool. They're looking for more like you, Joshua. The implications were staggering. Someone within the Federation, or perhaps outside of it, was searching for individuals with extraordinary cognitive abilities, individuals like Joshua. But for what purpose? And who were these shadowy figures pulling the strings? The final day of the games dawned with a chill wind sweeping across the Andorian tundra. Kara, Joshua, and Valak met in a secure room deep beneath the tournament arena. Holographic maps flickered before them, displaying the sprawling complex and its myriad points of interest. This is it, Valak said, his voice low. We've narrowed the source of the signal to a hidden facility beneath the arena. Kara's heart pounded as they made their way through dimly lit corridors, her every sense alert for danger. Valak led the way, his Andorian combat instincts honed to a razor's edge. They reached a heavily reinforced door, its surface shimmering with energy fields designed to repel intruders. Stand back, Valak ordered as he placed a small device against the door. There was a soft whine, followed by a muted thud, and the energy fields dissipated. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a vast chamber filled with advanced technology far beyond anything Kara had ever seen. Holographic displays hummed with data streams, and strange devices pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. But it was the figure standing at the center of the room that caught her breath, a figure so tall and regal, with a presence that seemed to distort the very air around them. The figure turned, revealing features that were both alien and familiar, a visage that seemed to shift between forms as if it couldn't decide on a single shape. Kara's mind reeled as she recognized the being from her studies, a Q, a member of the all-powerful, godlike race that had long been a mystery to the Federation. Welcome, the Q said in a voice that resonated with an otherworldly timbre. I've been expecting you. Kara's mouth went dry as she stared up at the Q, whose very presence seemed to radiate an aura of overwhelming power and knowledge. The stories she had heard about the Q were true. They were beings who could bend the fabric of reality to their will, playing with the lives of mortals as though they were nothing more than pieces on a cosmic chessboard. But why would a Q be interested in Joshua? What game were they playing now? We have much to discuss, the Q said, a faint smile playing on their ever-shifting features. But first, you must understand the truth of what Joshua really is. A wave of the Q's hand, and the chamber around them transformed into a swirling vortex of stars and galaxies, a cosmic tapestry that defied comprehension. Images flashed before Kara's eyes, scenes of distant worlds, civilizations rising and falling, and then, at the center of it all, a single point of light, growing ever brighter. This, the Q said, is the genesis of Joshua Carter. Not born, but created, crafted from the very fabric of the universe by forces older than time itself. He is a singularity, a focal point around which the future of the galaxy will pivot. And you, Kara, have been chosen to guide him. Kara's mind raced to process this revelation. Joshua wasn't just a genetically engineered human or some kind of Federation experiment. He was something far more, something beyond her understanding. And now, she was being asked to play a role in whatever destiny awaited him. But why me? She asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. Why not someone else, someone more capable? The Q's smile deepened, and they regarded her with an expression that was almost fond. Because, Kara, you possess something that no other being in the galaxy has, a mind as sharp as a scalpel, and a heart as fierce as a supernova. You have the strength to stand by Joshua, to help him navigate the path that lies ahead. And that is why you were chosen. Kara's thoughts swirled with conflicting emotions. The enormity of what was being asked of her was overwhelming, but at the same time, she felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she had ever known. She looked over at Joshua, who met her gaze with those deep, intense eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the universe within them. "We're in this together," Joshua said quietly, his voice steady. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a team." Kara nodded, a sense of resolve settling over her. "Then let's do it," she said. "Let's find out what the future holds." The Q raised a hand, and the cosmic vortex around them began to fade, replaced once more by the chamber filled with advanced technology. "Very well," the Q said. "The path you've chosen will not be an easy one. There will be challenges, dangers, and forces that will seek to destroy you. But if you succeed, you will help to shape the future of the galaxy itself." With that, the Q stepped back, their form beginning to dissolve into the air like mist. "I will be watching," they said, their voice echoing through the chamber as they vanished from sight. For a moment, there was silence as Kara and Joshua stood there, processing everything they had just learned. Then, without a word, they turned and left the chamber, Valak following close behind. They knew that whatever lay ahead, it would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. As they emerged back into the icy winds of Andoria, Kara felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The pieces were falling into place, and she knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, a prelude to a much larger, more dangerous game. And as the chill wind whipped around her, Kara silently vowed to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The shuttle hummed softly as it ascended through the atmosphere, leaving behind the icy plains of Andoria. Inside the cabin, the silence between Kara, Joshua, and Valak was thick with unspoken questions. The events in the hidden chamber had shaken them all, but now was not the time to dwell on mysteries beyond their understanding. They had to focus on what lay ahead. Kara sat in her seat, her mind racing as she replayed the Q's words. A singularity, a focal point around which the future of the galaxy will pivot. It was a weighty destiny, one that made her both excited and terrified. She glanced over at Joshua, who stared out the window, his expression unreadable. How was he processing all this? He had been a mystery since the moment she met him, but now that mystery had deepened to a degree she hadn't thought possible. As the shuttle broke through Andoria's atmosphere and entered the cold, silent void of space, Valak's voice cut through the tension. "We need to regroup and assess our next move. The Q's intervention changes everything." Kara nodded, grateful for the Andorian's pragmatism. "Agreed. But first, we need to understand more about this. Project Prometheus. We've barely scratched the surface." Joshua turned away from the window, his eyes locking onto Kara's. "Project Prometheus isn't just about me," he said, his voice calm but tinged with an undercurrent of urgency. "It's about something much bigger. I've been trying to piece it together since I found out about my origins, but there's so much I don't know." Valak leaned forward, his antennae twitching with curiosity. "What do you know? What have you uncovered so far?" Joshua hesitated, then sighed. The project was initiated by a covert faction within the Federation, but it wasn't just Federation scientists involved. There were others, outsiders. They wanted to create beings who could harness and manipulate quantum realities, who could think beyond the limitations of ordinary minds. I'm the first successful attempt, but there were failures. Others like me, but not like me. They didn't survive. Kara felt a chill run down her spine. What happened to them? Joshua's gaze darkened. They were terminated. Their minds couldn't handle the strain. The ones who survived are out there somewhere, but I don't know how many or where. Valak clenched his fists. So, the Federation has been creating super beings in secret, playing with forces they barely understand, and now we're caught in the middle of it. Exactly, Joshua said, his voice steady. But it's not just about creating beings like me. There's something else, something they were preparing us for. A threat, maybe, or an opportunity. I don't know. But I can feel it. Something's coming. Something big. Kara's mind raced. The Federation was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, a beacon of hope and progress for countless species. But what Joshua was describing was something else entirely. A shadow organization operating within its ranks, bending the rules to create weapons of unimaginable power. The implications were staggering. We need answers, Kara said, her voice firm. And we're not going to find them here. We need to go deeper into Federation space, to the heart of this conspiracy. Valak nodded in agreement. But we can't just barge in. We need to be smart about this. We need to gather allies, people we can trust. And we need to do it quietly. Joshua's eyes narrowed in thought. There's someone I know. Someone who was involved in the early stages of Project Prometheus. A scientist, Dr. Alara Voss. She disappeared after the first few experiments failed, but I've been tracking her. She's on the edge of Federation space, in a remote research outpost. If anyone can tell us more about what's going on, it's her. Kara's heart quickened at the prospect of finally getting some real answers. Then that's our next move. We find Dr. Voss, and we get her to tell us everything she knows. Valak stood up, his posture commanding. I'll start making the preparations. We'll need to approach the outpost carefully, no telling what kind of security measures they have in place. As Valak left the cabin, Kara and Joshua were left alone in the dim light of the shuttle. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kara broke the silence. How are you holding up? Joshua gave her a small, weary smile. It's a lot to take in, but I've been living with this uncertainty for a long time now. Finding out the truth, no matter how terrifying, is better than living in the dark. Kara reached out and placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of solidarity. We'll figure this out together, Joshua. You're not alone in this. He looked at her, gratitude flickering in his eyes. Thank you, Kara. That means more than you know. As the shuttle continued its journey through the vastness of space, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking their every move. The Q had said they would be watching, but was it just them? Or were there others, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? The journey to the remote outpost was long and tense. They traveled under the guise of a diplomatic mission, their ship's transponder broadcasting a false identity to avoid suspicion. Valak, ever the strategist, had plotted a course through little-traveled sectors, avoiding major space lanes and sensor arrays. They couldn't risk drawing attention, not with what they were carrying. Kara spent the time poring over every scrap of information she could find on Project Prometheus and its enigmatic leader, a man known only by his code name, Director Thorne. His name was whispered in the darkest corners of the Federation's intelligence community, a ghostly figure who pulled strings from the shadows. But every lead she followed turned into a dead end. Every data file she hacked into was scrubbed clean. It's like he doesn't exist, Kara muttered in frustration one night as she and Joshua huddled in the ship's cramped command center, their faces lit by the pale glow of a dozen holoscreens. Whoever this Thorne is, he's covered his tracks too well. Even the best hackers in the Federation can't trace him. Joshua leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed in thought. Maybe we're looking in the wrong place. Thorne's not just a spy master, he's a scientist. And if there's one thing scientists love, it's leaving behind a record of their work. It's a matter of pride. Kara glanced at him, intrigued. You think he left something behind? Something we can use? Joshua nodded slowly. If he's as brilliant as the rumors suggest, he wouldn't just erase everything. He'd hide it, encrypt it, bury it where only someone with the right key could find it. The question is, where? Before Kara could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. We're approaching the outpost, Valak's voice came through, tense but controlled. Prepare for landing. The outpost loomed into view on the main screen. A small, nondescript station orbiting a barren, rocky planet on the fringes of Federation space. It was the kind of place where people went to disappear, where secrets could be kept in the cold, dark vacuum of space. As they docked, Kara felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. This was it, the moment they had been building toward. If Dr. Voss was here, if she could give them the answers they needed, then they would finally be one step closer to uncovering the truth. But if she wasn't, They disembarked into the dimly lit corridors of the outpost, the stale air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen. Valek led the way, his hand never straying far from the hilt of his blade. Kara and Joshua followed close behind, their senses alert for any sign of danger. The outpost was eerily silent, its halls deserted. It was as if the entire station had been abandoned, left to drift through space like a ghost ship. But Kara knew better. The sensors on their ship had picked up faint life signs. Someone was here. They reached the main control room, a small, cluttered space filled with outdated terminals and hollow projectors. Valek motioned for them to stop, then stepped forward, his blade flashing in the dim light as he pressed a sequence of buttons on the control panel. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a live feed from the station's internal cameras. Kara scanned the feeds, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a figure huddled in one of the station's laboratories, surrounded by stacks of data chips and research equipment. "There," she said, pointing to the screen. "That's her. That's Dr. Voss." They moved quickly, navigating the station's labyrinthine corridors until they reached the lab. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing the figure they had seen on the screen. A woman in her mid-40s, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes tired and haunted. Dr. Alara Voss looked up as they entered, her expression wary but not surprised. "You found me," she said quietly, her voice tinged with resignation. "I knew it was only a matter of time." Kara stepped forward, trying to keep her voice calm. "We're not here to hurt you, Dr. Voss. We just want answers. We need to know the truth about Project Prometheus." Voss eyed them warily, her gaze lingering on Joshua. "You're one of them, aren't you? One of the Prometheans. I can see it in your eyes." Joshua nodded slowly. "Yes, but I'm not like the others. I need to know what they were trying to create, what their ultimate goal was." Dr. Voss sighed, her shoulders sagging with the weight of years of secrets. "You're asking for answers that could get us all killed. But I suppose you have a right to know. You and the others, you were meant to be more than just weapons. You were meant to be saviors. The galaxy is on the brink of something terrible, something that not even the Federation can stop. That's why Thorne started the project, to create beings who could think and act beyond the limits of ordinary beings, who could see the bigger picture." Kara felt a cold chill run down her spine. What is this threat? What's coming? Dr. Voss looked at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sorrow. "The end," she whispered. "The end of everything." The revelation hung in the air like a suffocating fog. The end? The end of what? Kara's mind raced, trying to grasp the implications of Dr. Voss's words. But before she could press for more information, Valek, ever alert, raised a hand to signal silence. "Someone's coming," he whispered, his antennae twitching. Kara's pulse quickened. They had been so focused on Dr. Voss that they hadn't considered who else might be on this outpost. Could it be one of Thorne's agents, sent to silence the scientist before she could reveal too much? Dr. Voss's eyes darted to the door, her fear palpable. "We don't have much time. If they find us here, we're all dead." "Who's after you?" Joshua asked, his voice low and steady, despite the tension in the room. Voss shook her head, her expression grim. "They're called the Unseen, a covert group within the Federation, loyal only to Thorne. They're the ones who enforce his will, who clean up his messes. And they'll stop at nothing to keep Project Prometheus under wraps." Kara exchanged a glance with Valek. They needed to get out of here, fast, but they also needed more information. "Tell us everything you know, Dr. Voss. We need to understand what we're up against." The scientist hesitated, her gaze flickering to the door as the sound of footsteps grew louder. Finally, she nodded, as if resigning herself to the inevitable. Project Prometheus was more than just an experiment in genetic enhancement. It was a response to a looming threat, one that only a select few within the Federation know about. A threat from beyond our galaxy. Beyond the galaxy? Kara echoed, her stomach tightening with dread. What kind of threat? Voss glanced at Joshua, her expression one of sorrow. An invasion. A species from another galaxy. A species that doesn't just conquer but consumes. They've been probing our defenses for years, testing our limits. And they're getting closer. Thorne believed that only by creating beings who could transcend the limitations of ordinary life could we hope to survive what's coming. Valak's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. Why the secrecy? Why not prepare the Federation openly? Voss sighed, running a hand through her graying hair. Because Thorne doesn't trust the Federation. He believes that the bureaucracy and politics would slow down any real effort to defend against the invaders. He's seen what happens when governments panic. They make mistakes. They fight among themselves. He decided to act alone, in secret, to prepare for the coming war. Kara felt a pang of fear. If what Voss was saying was true, then the Federation was in more danger than anyone realized. And what about the Prometheans? What was Joshua, meant to do? Voss's gaze softened as she looked at Joshua. You were meant to be the first line of defense. A new kind of soldier, capable of thinking and acting in ways that ordinary beings can't. You were meant to lead us into a new era of warfare, one where survival would depend on more than just strength, but on adaptability, on the ability to see the future and shape it. Joshua's expression was unreadable, but Kara could see the turmoil in his eyes. He had been created for a purpose he hadn't chosen, but one that was now inescapably his. Before they could ask more, the door to the lab slid open with a hiss. A group of armed figures stepped inside, their faces obscured by helmets. The unseen had arrived. Move now, Valak barked, drawing his blade as he pushed Dr. Voss behind him. Kara and Joshua sprang into action, their weapons drawn as they positioned themselves between the attackers and Voss. The unseen didn't hesitate. They opened fire, energy blasts lighting up the dim lab. Kara ducked behind a console, her heart pounding as she returned fire. The unseen moved with military precision, their shots narrowly missing as they advanced. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were trained killers, experts in close-quarters combat. Joshua, take out their flank, Valak shouted, his voice barely audible over the sound of the firefight. Joshua nodded, his face set with determination. He darted to the side, his movements fluid and fast as he circled around the unseen, using the cover of the lab's equipment to stay out of sight. Kara watched in awe as he moved. There was something almost superhuman about the way he fought, a grace and speed that she had never seen before. As Joshua closed in on the unseen's flank, Kara focused on the group in front of her. She fired off a few well-aimed shots, forcing the attackers to take cover. But they weren't backing down. One of them, a tall figure with a heavy blaster, stepped forward, firing in rapid succession, his shots chipping away at the console Kara was hiding behind. We can't hold them off forever, Valak called out, parrying a shot that came too close. Kara knew he was right. They were outnumbered and outgunned. If they didn't find a way out, they would be overwhelmed. Her mind raced, searching for a solution. They needed to disable the unseen's weapons, or at least slow them down. Then, an idea struck her. The lab was filled with experimental equipment, some of it dangerous, if used improperly. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a containment unit near the back. If she could overload it, the resulting explosion might give them the chance they needed to escape. Cover me, Kara shouted to Valak and Joshua, who were locked in combat with the unseen. Without waiting for a response, she sprinted across the room, ducking and weaving to avoid the blaster fire that followed her. She reached the containment unit and quickly began overriding the safety protocols, her fingers flying over the controls. Come on, she muttered, glancing over her shoulder as the unseen closed in. Valak and Joshua were holding them off, but barely. They needed more time. Finally, the containment unit's lights began to flash, warning of an imminent overload. Kara set the timer for a few seconds and then dashed back to the others. Get down. She barely had time to dive for cover before the unit exploded with a deafening roar. The shockwave tore through the lab, sending the unseen flying. The force of the blast knocked Kara off her feet, and for a moment, the world spun as she struggled to regain her bearings. When the dust settled, the lab was in shambles. Equipment was scattered everywhere, and several of the unseen lay unconscious or worse. The few who were still standing looked disoriented, their helmets cracked from the blast. Valak didn't waste a second. He lunged at the nearest attacker, his blade flashing as he struck with deadly precision. Joshua, too, was quick to recover, moving with a speed that Kara could barely follow as he took down the remaining enemies. In less than a minute, it was over. The unseen were defeated, their bodies slumped on the lab floor. Kara stood up, breathing heavily, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. They had won, but the cost had been high. The lab was destroyed, and Dr. Voss was nowhere to be seen. "She's gone," Valek said, his voice grim as he surveyed the wreckage. "She must have escaped during the fight." Kara cursed under her breath. They had been so close to getting the answers they needed, and now Voss was gone, possibly forever. But as she looked at Joshua, who stood amidst the debris, she knew that their fight was far from over. "We need to find her," Kara said, determination hardening her voice. "She's the only one who can tell us what's really going on. Without her, we're blind." Joshua nodded, his expression resolute. "And we need to stop Thorn before it's too late. Whatever he's planning, it's bigger than any of us." Valek sheathed his blade, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Agreed. But we need to be careful. The unseen will be back, and next time, they won't underestimate us." Kara looked around the ruined lab, her mind racing with possibilities. They had just survived an encounter with Thorn's most deadly agents, but the battle was far from over. The threat was real, and it was coming for them. "We have to move fast," she said. "Let's find Voss and get the truth before Thorn brings the galaxy to its knees." With that, they left the shattered lab behind, the echoes of the explosion fading into the cold silence of space. Their mission had just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The future of the galaxy depended on them now, and there was no turning back.